They say the suburbs are safe, quiet streets, friendly faces, perfect lives. But sometimes the real horror isn't in the dark, it's next door. 5 stories of ordinary neighbors with terrifying secrets. And trust me, the last one will haunt you the most. When I first moved into Willow Creek, I thought I'd finally found peace. After years of city noise and apartment walls so thin I could hear my neighbor snore, the quiet of a tree-lined suburb felt like a dream. Every house had the same neat lawn, the same pastel mailbox, the same kind of friendly smiles you see in real estate brochures. The day I moved in, a man from across the street came over with lemonade and a grin that looked practiced. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said. "I'm Tom Reddick. My wife and I live just over there." He pointed at the tidy blue house with perfect hedges. Even his dog, a golden retriever with a red collar, looked like it belonged in an ad. Tom helped me carry boxes inside, chatting the whole time. He told me the trash schedule, which lawns to avoid because of sprinklers, even who bakes the best cookies on the street. When he left, I remember thinking, finally, a normal neighbor. For the first few weeks, things were perfect. I'd see Tom trimming his hedges every morning, waving as I left for work. Sometimes he'd bring my mail to the door, saying the postman must have mixed them up again. Once, he handed me a letter addressed to me but opened. He laughed, embarrassed, said he hadn't noticed until it was too late. I believed him. Then little things started feeling off. One night I came home around 9 and saw Tom's silhouette through my window, standing across the street, hands on his hips, staring at my house. When I flicked the porch light on, he waved and walked away like nothing had happened. A week later, I found my back gate unlatched. The latch was old, but I was sure I'd closed it. The next morning, Tom greeted me with a smile. "You might want to fix that gate," he said casually. "Wouldn't want anyone sneaking in." It was the way he said anyone, like he was including himself, that made me uneasy. I tried to brush it off. Suburb paranoia, I told myself. But then came the smell of coffee. Every morning when I left for work, my house smelled faintly like brewed coffee, though I never made any. One day I came home early and heard footsteps inside. Heart pounding, I unlocked the door and found no one. Just the faint smell of aftershave that wasn't mine and a mug in the sink I didn't remember using. That night I installed a camera above my front door. 2 days later, Tom came over with his usual smile. "Hey, noticed you got a new camera up there," he said. "Just so you know, the HOA requires permission for exterior fixtures. Don't want you to get fined." I hadn't told anyone about the camera. The HOA paperwork hadn't even arrived yet. The next morning, the camera feed was dead. The SD card was gone. I confronted him that evening. He stood on his driveway in his khaki shorts and that same calm smile. "You think I broke into your house?" he said, half laughing. "Come on, I'm your neighbor." His wife, Karen, peeked out from behind the curtain watching us. She didn't wave. That weekend, I decided to check all the windows, add new locks. When I got to the kitchen, I noticed something chilling. The small basement window had a smudge, like a fingerprint from the inside. I hadn't been down there since I moved in. I took a flashlight, went down the creaky stairs and saw it. A folding chair against the far wall, facing up toward the window. Dust everywhere, except for the clean circle beneath the chair's legs. Someone had been sitting there, watching. I moved out the next day, or tried to. When I started loading boxes into my car, Tom appeared again. "Moving already?" he asked, tilting his head. "That's too bad. You were starting to fit in." He looked at my car, then at my front door. "Need help with anything inside?" I shook my head, heart pounding. "No, I've got it." He smiled wider. "You sure? I still have your spare key, remember? From that day the movers got locked out. Thought I gave it back, but maybe I didn't." He said it like it was nothing, like he was testing me. I drove straight to a motel that night, took a shower, tried to sleep, but sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed. A notification from the doorbell camera app. Somehow the feed was back online. The motion alert showed a man standing in my living room, looking straight into the lens. His face was too close to the camera, but I didn't need to see clearly. I knew that smile. I called the police. When they arrived, the house was empty. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. But my closet was open, and all my clothes were folded differently. My toothbrush was gone. Tom and Karen came out to talk to the officers, acting concerned. "That's so strange," Tom said. "We didn't see anyone." The cops advised me to stay somewhere else for the night. I did. 2 days later, the police said they couldn't prove anything. No evidence of a break-in, they told me. Could be a glitch in your camera. A glitch, right? I went back once, weeks later, just to grab the last few things. The blue house across the street looked the same. Perfect hedges, shining windows, the flag on the porch. Only now, there was a for sale sign in the yard. Tom and Karen were gone. Relief washed over me until I unlocked my door. The house was spotless, too spotless. The faint scent of aftershave hung in the air again. On the kitchen table, a single mug waited, black coffee steaming. There was a note beside it. Glad you're back. I knew you'd come home. That was 6 months ago. I live in a new neighborhood now. Different town, different state, security system in every corner. But sometimes I catch sight of a blue house when I'm driving and my stomach knots up. Last week, a moving truck pulled up across the street. New neighbors. A man with a golden retriever and a bright red collar stepped out, smiling wide, waving like we'd met before. He looked exactly the same. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe I'm paranoid. But I swear, when I came home last night, my porch light was on. The same way it used to be back in Willow Creek. And on my welcome mat sat a mug of black coffee, still warm. When my wife and I bought our first home, it felt like we'd finally achieved something real, something solid. A small 2-story in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind of place where people jog in the mornings and wave from their driveways. The lawns were trimmed, the mailboxes freshly painted, and the air always smelled faintly of cut grass and barbecues. We moved in late spring, and by summer we knew most of our neighbors, except for the man next door. His name was Dennis Laird. I only knew that because it was on his mailbox. The first time I saw him, he was standing in his backyard at dusk, hands on his hips, staring at the wooden fence that divided our properties. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared at that fence like it had personally offended him. I remember thinking he was just one of those grumpy old suburban types who complain about everything. I wasn't wrong. A week after moving in, we woke up to find a note taped to our door. In neat, blocky handwriting, it said, "Your fence is 3 inches over the property line. Fix it." No greeting, no signature, just that. I showed it to my wife, Emily, and we both laughed it off. But when I went out with a tape measure, I realized the fence had been there long before we moved in. It wasn't new, and the realtor had said nothing about boundaries. Still, I figured it wasn't worth a fight. I talked to him that afternoon, walking up to the fence while he was watering his garden. "Hey, Dennis," I said, keeping it friendly. "I got your note. The fence was here when we bought the place, but if it's bothering you, maybe we can." He cut me off. "It's over my property line," he said flatly, eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. "Move it, or I'll take it down myself." Then he turned off the hose and walked away. I stood there, dumbfounded, watching the water pool around my side of the grass. I thought about calling the city or looking up property records, but life got busy, and I let it go. That was my first mistake. A few mornings later, I found one of our garden lights smashed. A week after that, someone dumped a pile of weeds and dirt just over the fence onto our side. I started to suspect Dennis, but without proof, what could I do? Emily told me to ignore him, that we didn't move here to get into neighbor wars. I agreed, until the night I caught him in our yard. I had fallen asleep on the couch, woke up around 1 a.m., and noticed motion lights flicker outside. When I peeked through the blinds, there he was, Dennis, kneeling near the fence with a flashlight, measuring tape in hand. I opened the back door and shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" He didn't even flinch. He just looked up, calm as ever, and said, "Checking the line. You'll thank me when I fix it." Then he stood and walked back to his yard like it was nothing. I called the police that night, but they said unless he damaged property or threatened me, there wasn't much they could do. They'd send a patrol car around, but nothing happened. The next day, Dennis was trimming his hedges, humming to himself like he hadn't trespassed into my yard hours earlier. A few days later, I came home from work and found the entire section of fence between our houses torn down. Just gone. My tool shed door was open too. Dennis stood in his yard, arms crossed, the dismantled boards stacked neatly behind him. "Told you it was on my property," he said with a smug grin. I was furious. I called the police again, filed a report, but Dennis showed them his survey documents, and apparently, he wasn't entirely wrong. The fence was indeed a few inches over the line. He got a warning for removing it without my consent, but that was all. I decided to rebuild the fence, this time directly on the official line, higher and sturdier than before. I even added metal brackets so it couldn't be taken apart easily. It only made him angrier. For weeks, I'd catch him standing there at night, staring at the new fence, hands twitching, muttering to himself. Emily told me not to engage, but then our dog went missing. We searched the neighborhood for hours, calling his name until midnight. When I walked behind the shed, I found his collar, buried halfway in the dirt near the fence. The tag was bent and the clasp was snapped. I confronted Dennis the next morning, my voice shaking with rage, but he only smiled. "You should really keep better track of your pets," he said, watering his roses. The police couldn't do anything without evidence, and Emily begged me to let it go. I tried, but I couldn't sleep. I started installing cameras around the yard, pointing them at the fence line. 2 nights later, the feed went black. When I checked the system, every wire had been cut cleanly. That's when I realized Dennis wasn't just angry, he was watching us. I caught him again one evening, standing at the edge of his property with binoculars. When I yelled, he just laughed. I called the HOA, filed complaints, but somehow they always sided with him. He'd lived there longer, had connections, knew all the rules by heart. Then one morning, Emily found footprints in the soft dirt under our bedroom window. Bare footprints. They led from the fence to the window and back again. That was the night I bought motion-activated lights for the entire yard. It didn't matter. Around 3 a.m., the lights kept triggering, flicking on and off, but every time I looked out, there was nothing. I started sleeping in the living room with a baseball bat. Then one night, I heard something different. Hammering. Soft, deliberate hammering from the backyard. I crept out, heart pounding, and saw him again on my side of the fence, driving nails into something. When I yelled, he ran, fast for an old man, back through a gap he'd cut behind the bushes. When I reached the spot, I froze. Nailed to the new fence was my dog's collar, the metal tag gleaming in the motion light. That was it. We left the next morning. I told the police again, filed a restraining order, even sold the house 2 months later. We moved 3 towns away into a neighborhood with no shared fences. Life's been peaceful since, but last week, a letter showed up at our new address. No return name, just neat, blocky handwriting. "Your property line's off again. Thought you'd want to know." Our neighborhood was the kind of place real estate agents called safe and secure. A suburban development built in the early 2000s, every house looked nearly identical. Gray siding, neat lawns, and the faint hum of sprinklers every evening at 7. There was even a neighborhood watch group that bragged about having the lowest crime rate in the county. That was mostly thanks to one man, our next-door neighbor, Paul Henderson. Paul was obsessed with safety. He had cameras everywhere, on his garage, on his fence posts, even one pointing at his mailbox. He used to say they weren't just for him, but for all of us. "You can't be too careful these days," he'd say with that smile of his, the kind that never quite reached his eyes. When my wife and I moved in, he was the first to greet us. He handed me a brochure about the community's shared surveillance initiative, which he apparently ran himself. "I can hook you into the network," he said. "That way, we all keep an eye on things." I thanked him, but politely declined. I had my own small camera by the front door and didn't need some stranger's feed running through my house. Paul didn't seem offended, but I noticed his smile lingered a bit too long. For a while, everything was fine. The street was quiet, people waved when they walked their dogs, and Paul kept busy tinkering with his camera setup. You could always tell when he was home because the faint red lights of his devices blinked like fireflies in the dark. I joked that our street was probably visible from space with all his equipment. But one night, around 2 months after we moved in, something strange happened. I came home from work late, and as I parked, I noticed one of Paul's cameras, mounted high on a tree, was aimed directly at our bedroom window. I froze. It hadn't been positioned that way before. The next morning, I casually asked him about it while we were both taking out the trash. "Oh, that one? Yeah, sorry, the wind must have shifted it," he said, without even looking up from his recycling bin. But when I got home later and checked again, it was still pointed right at our window. I told my wife, Leah, and she got uneasy. "That guy gives me the creeps," she said. He's always outside when I come home, always watching. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just one of those control freaks who needed to feel in charge. But a few nights later, Leah woke me around 2 a.m. She whispered, "There's a light outside." I got up, looked through the blinds, and saw Paul standing in his driveway, shining a flashlight up at our house. Not his own, ours. He was scanning the front of it slowly, deliberately, like inspecting something. When he noticed the blinds move, he waved, smiled, and went back inside. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I installed blackout curtains and re-angled our door camera toward his property line, just in case. When I checked the footage that evening, I noticed something strange. There were clips missing, whole hours gone, replaced with blank black screens. It didn't make sense. The camera had never done that before. Then I saw it, one short clip, only a few seconds long, showing Paul standing at the edge of our yard, reaching up toward the lens. After that, the video cut out. I replaced the SD card, locked the footage away, and started documenting everything. Over the next few weeks, we noticed subtle changes. Small things at first. Our garbage bins were moved slightly out of place, the mail sometimes left open on the porch, our porch light unscrewed. Leah swore someone had been inside because her perfume bottle was missing, only to reappear later in the exact same spot. I called the police once after catching him standing on our side of the fence, claiming he was fixing a loose wire. They gave him a warning and left, but I could tell he didn't take it seriously. The next morning, a new camera appeared on a utility pole facing directly into our backyard. Paul told me it was part of the shared network. I called the city. They had no record of it. That's when I realized just how far his system had spread. There were cameras everywhere. I started walking the neighborhood one evening, trying to clear my head, and I began noticing them. Tiny black lenses tucked under eaves, hidden in fake birdhouses, even in one of the stop signs at the corner. All wired, all pointing inward toward the homes. Every single one looked like the models Paul used. That night, Leah found something on her phone, a new contact request on her social media account from a profile with our street address as the username. The profile picture was our living room, taken from an angle that could only be seen from inside the house. She screamed, dropped the phone, and I immediately called the police again. When they came, the photo had vanished. The account was gone, deleted. They told us there wasn't enough to investigate. 2 nights later, our internet started acting up, random disconnects, cameras going offline. I went outside with a flashlight and caught Paul crouched by the side of our house near the router box. When I yelled, he didn't even run. He just stood up slowly and said, "You really should let me integrate your system. It'd make things easier for both of us." That was the night Leah packed a bag and stayed with her sister. I stayed behind, determined to catch him in the act. I set up new hidden cameras inside the house this time, ones he wouldn't know about. I barely slept, just sat watching the feeds on my laptop. Nothing happened for 2 nights. Then around 3 a.m., on the 3rd, I saw movement in the backyard, a shadow near the sliding door, then the faint click of the lock turning. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the couch and crept toward the kitchen. The door slid open a few inches, and the red recording light on my laptop froze. I waited. A silhouette moved across the glass, and then, just like that, it stopped. The figure stepped back and vanished into the dark. I called the police again, but when they arrived, there was no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no damage. They must have thought I was paranoid. The next morning, all of Paul's cameras were gone. Every single one. The poles were empty, the mounts removed, the wires stripped clean. His driveway was bare, his porch light off. His house looked abandoned, blinds drawn tight. Leah came back a week later when she heard he'd moved out. We started to relax again. The street felt normal for the first time in months. Then about 3 weeks later, I got a package. No return address, no postage, just left on our porch. Inside was a single USB drive and a note written in Paul's handwriting. "You're safe now. I'll still be watching." I threw the drive in a drawer, meaning to hand it to the police, but curiosity got the better of me that night. I plugged it into my laptop. It contained dozens of video files, each one dated, labeled with addresses, including ours. I clicked one. The footage showed our living room, Leah sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone. The angle was from above, like from a ceiling corner. Another video showed me sleeping. Another, Leah in the shower. I ripped the drive out, heart pounding, and called the cops immediately. They took it as evidence, but I never heard back. They said Paul's house was empty, stripped bare, no forwarding address. I installed a new security system after that. No external access, no Wi-Fi. But sometimes at night, I still hear the faint whir of a camera lens adjusting, the soft mechanical click of something focusing. And last week, Leah woke up to a notification on her phone, a motion alert from an unknown device. When she opened it, the live feed showed our bedroom from the corner near the ceiling, the same angle as the footage from the USB. After my divorce, I needed a fresh start, somewhere quiet and predictable, a place where I could breathe again. So when I found the small rental on Maple Hollow Lane, it felt perfect. 2 bedrooms, a cozy porch, and a peaceful suburban neighborhood where everyone smiled when you drove by. The real estate agent said it was a great community, mostly families and retirees, low crime, friendly neighbors. I moved in that fall, grateful to finally have space of my own again. The day I arrived, a man from across the street came over to introduce himself. He was tall, maybe late 50s, with neatly combed gray hair and pressed khaki pants. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said warmly. "Name's Mr. Collins. If you need anything, I'm right there." He pointed at the brick house opposite mine, the one with the perfect lawn and American flag that looked ironed. He was polite, maybe too polite, but after years of city living, it felt nice to have a neighbor who cared. The first few days went by smoothly. I unpacked, started repainting the living room, took walks around the block. Mr. Collins would wave from his porch, sometimes watering his plants or washing his car, always at the same time of day. I began to notice he was always outside whenever I was. If I stepped out for the mail, he'd suddenly be trimming the hedge. If I took out the trash, he'd be wiping down his mailbox. One night, I sat on the porch after work with a glass of wine, scrolling my phone, when I felt it, that unmistakable sense of being watched. I looked up, and there he was, standing across the street in his driveway, motionless, just staring, not waving, not smiling, just watching. When he noticed me noticing him, he gave a little nod and turned to go inside. I tried to shrug it off, but it lingered. The next morning, I found an envelope tucked into my mailbox. Inside was a printed photo. Me, sitting on my porch the night before, holding my glass of wine. No note, no explanation. My hands trembled as I looked up toward his house. The curtains twitched. I called the leasing office, told them I thought one of my neighbors was harassing me, but they said there wasn't much they could do unless it was a clear threat. I started keeping the blinds closed and locking up tight every night. Still, I'd catch glimpses of him, walking his dog slow enough to linger in front of my house, pausing by the end of my driveway, looking up at my windows. I even saw him once standing under a streetlight at 2 a.m., facing my home like he was guarding it. My best friend Renee told me to ignore him, said maybe he was just lonely. That's what I tried to believe until the light started flickering. It began with the porch light. One evening it blinked off, then back on, over and over, in a steady rhythm. I assumed it was faulty wiring, but then the kitchen light started doing it too. I called an electrician, but when he came, everything worked perfectly. That same night, I saw Mr. Collins sitting on his porch, remote in hand, watching my house. The next morning I checked the light fixtures myself. Inside the porch light cover, I found a small black device taped behind the bulb, a camera. My stomach dropped. I pulled it out, bagged it, and called the police. The officer came, took a report, and questioned Mr. Collins, but when he came back, he said the man denied everything and there was no proof the camera was his. Could be from a previous tenant, the officer said. They left, and Mr. Collins waved at me from across the street, smiling. 2 days later, I found another envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a note, typed this time. "You should keep your curtains closed at night. It's safer that way." I wanted to move right then, but the lease had months left, and breaking it would have cost me thousands. So I installed security cameras, one on the front porch, one on the back door, one facing the driveway. For a few days, it helped me feel safer. Then I woke one morning to find the front camera hanging by its wire, lens smashed. The others were gone completely. I called the police again, but like before, they said without footage or a witness, they couldn't do much. That night, I slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. Around 1 a.m., I woke to the sound of my doorbell ringing, once, twice, then silence. My phone buzzed with a notification from the motion sensor. When I checked, the feed was black, but I could still hear the audio, a faint breathing sound close to the microphone. I stayed perfectly still until dawn. The next day, I decided to confront him directly. I walked across the street, heart hammering, and knocked on his door. It opened a few inches, and he appeared, calm as ever. "Can I help you?" he asked, eyes cold. "I know what you're doing," I said. "Stay away from my house." His smile didn't move, but his eyes darkened. "You shouldn't make false accusations," he said softly. "People around here don't take kindly to that." He closed the door without another word. That evening, I came home to find a dead bird on my welcome mat, perfectly centered, wings spread. No note this time. I started spending nights at Renee's after that, too scared to stay alone. One night, she convinced me to come back with her and grab a few more clothes. It was after dark when we pulled up, headlights sweeping across my yard, and that's when we saw it. A light flickered in my living room window. The curtains were drawn, but we could see movement, a shadow pacing slowly back and forth. I grabbed my phone, called the police, and we waited in the car, shaking. When they arrived, they went in guns drawn. The house was empty, nothing stolen, nothing broken, but the back door was unlocked. They said maybe I'd left it open. I knew I hadn't. When they left, I went to lock it myself and saw muddy footprints, large ones, leading from the door toward the stairs. Upstairs in my bedroom, the sheets were turned down, like someone had been about to get in. On the nightstand was another envelope. "You shouldn't have brought guests. It's not safe for them." I screamed, dropped it, and ran outside. I didn't go back after that. I stayed with Renee, then moved to another state entirely. I didn't tell anyone the new address, not even my old landlord. For a while, I slept fine. No cameras, no curtains twitching, no cold eyes across the street. Then 3 months later, I got a package forwarded from my old mailing address. No return name, just my name written in block letters. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed me, in my new bedroom, asleep in bed. In the background, just barely visible through the window, was a man's reflection holding a camera. When my wife and I moved into Crestwood Estates, we thought we'd found the kind of suburban neighborhood people dream about. Wide streets lined with maple trees, families biking in the evenings, mailboxes shaped like tiny houses. It felt safe, predictable, like nothing bad could ever happen there. The community had its own messaging app called Crestwood Chat, where residents shared everything from garage sales to lost cats. It was supposed to make neighbors feel closer. In the beginning, it did. Every morning there'd be new posts, pictures of someone's garden, a warning about raccoons tipping over trash bins, updates about HOA meetings. But one night, about 2 months after we moved in, things changed. I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when a new message popped up in the chat group. It was a photo of our house, taken from the street. The caption said, "New family at 482 Maple Drive. Welcome." I smiled at first, probably just a friendly neighbor. But as I looked closer, I realized the photo wasn't one of those daytime shots people take during walks. It was taken at night. You could see our living room lights on, our silhouettes through the window. My wife, Laura, looked over my shoulder and frowned. "Who posted that?" The username was Neighborhood Watcher. We didn't recognize it. It wasn't one of the usual posters, and the profile had no photo or details. We assumed it was someone being a little too welcoming and brushed it off. The next night, another photo appeared. This time it was our backyard, taken through the fence. The caption said, "Beautiful place. You should close the gate at night, though, just in case." That one unsettled me. I went outside, checked the gate, and found it wide open. I could have sworn I'd locked it earlier. Laura was nervous, but I promised to keep an eye out. I even installed a motion light near the back fence. The chat went quiet for a few days, then new posts started appearing, not just about us, but about everyone. Why does 487 Maple keep their lights on until 2 a.m.? Did anyone else hear yelling from the Miller's house? Who's the man that visits 490 every Tuesday? Each post came with photos, grainy, zoomed-in shots taken through windows or across lawns. The tone was always the same, concern wrapped in politeness, like gossip disguised as safety tips. People started replying, angry and defensive, demanding to know who the neighborhood watcher was. The moderator said they were investigating, but the account kept posting anyway. Then one morning, there was a post about us again, a video this time. It showed me leaving for work, locking the front door, getting into my car. The caption read, "He always forgets to arm the alarm before leaving." My stomach dropped. That was true. I never used the alarm system that came with the house. Somehow, this person knew. I messaged the moderator privately, asking if they could trace the account. They said the user was connecting through a VPN, no identifiable info. They suggested it was probably a prank, but it didn't feel like a prank. The next few nights, we started hearing strange noises, soft clicks, the sound of gravel crunching near the windows. One night Laura screamed because she swore she saw someone standing in the yard near the tree line. I ran outside with a flashlight, but there was no one there, just footprints in the dirt. That same night, another post appeared. "No need to check outside. I'm just making sure you're safe." The comments exploded. People were terrified. Some accused others of being behind the account. Neighbors stopped talking, stopped waving. It was like paranoia spread through the whole street. Someone called the police, but the posts never stopped. A few days later, a family on the next street over moved out overnight. No warning, no sale notice. Their house sat empty for weeks. Then the watcher posted again, "I miss the Johnsons. They used to leave the back door unlocked." That was when the HOA held an emergency meeting. They demanded everyone change passwords, install new locks, and report suspicious activity. Still, that night, the watcher posted another picture, this time of the meeting itself. It was taken through the window of the community center. The caption read, "I was there too." I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a private message from the account. It said, "Don't worry, I like you and Laura, I'm only watching to protect you." My hands shook as I typed back, asking who they were. The reply came instantly, "A good neighbor. You just need to trust me." The next morning, Laura found our front door slightly open. Nothing was missing, but there was a faint smell of cologne in the hallway that wasn't mine. On the kitchen counter sat a Polaroid photo of us sleeping. That's when we packed a bag and stayed with her sister across town. While we were gone, more posts appeared in the chat. 482 Maple left in a hurry. "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on the house." I begged the police to trace the account again, but they said there was nothing they could do without a clear crime. They sent patrols around the neighborhood for a week, but the posts continued, now more cryptic. "Some of you don't deserve to live here. Some of you waste what you have." People started deleting the app. Others sold their homes. It felt like the entire neighborhood was unraveling. Then one day everything stopped. No more posts, no more photos. The account vanished completely. The moderator said it must have been deleted. Weeks passed and life slowly returned to normal. We dared to come home again, though the house felt different, like it had been touched, rearranged in invisible ways. A month later, Laura said she wanted to forget all of it. We changed our numbers, deleted the app, and tried to move on. Then one morning, as I was backing out of the driveway, my phone buzzed with a notification from an unfamiliar app I'd never downloaded. It was called Neighborly. When I opened it, there was only one post, a live photo feed showing our living room. Laura was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, unaware of the camera watching her from somewhere inside the house. The caption read, "Welcome back to Crestwood Chat. I've missed you."